So we have to have our own narrative of what history has been and what history is and what history can be used for. As Dr. Clark, our great scholar, said it best, history can be our clock to tell us where we come from, what time it is, and where we need to go. History can be a compass for us to let us know what we have to do and what we haven't done, so that we have to make sure that we don't build our narrative of socialization, how we get our values, and acculturation, how we fit into society, based upon the lies of European superiority and African inferiority. But we have to understand that we have suffered through a process of dehumanization, but our resilience and our strength has allowed us to rise. And we can say, as Maya Angelou said, "And still I rise." And African symbols of rebirth and resurrection, even after death and destruction, show that the Africans built into their culture a consciousness that out of death and destruction can come new life. And this is what is the lesson of HAPI, that there is resilience in the ecological systems of the earth, there's resilience in the human family on earth, and there's resilience in the mysteries of the universe and the divine order of the universe that is not fully understood. But it all represents a chance to bring out of death and destruction new life, and to do as the Africans understood they were doing, build for eternity.
Peace, Hotel. I'm your host, Taki, and welcome to another installment of HAPI Talks. Tonight we have a great discussion going on tonight. Backed by popular demand. We have Dr. Runoko Rashidi, this time talking about the African presence in early Europe. Very important discussion, very interesting discussion. It's really important that we like and share these videos. This discussion is going to be so powerful. It's an ongoing series of discussions of his great work. We did a couple, like last month, we did the African presence in ancient America. Now we're doing the African presence in early Europe. And perhaps next month or soon, we're going to be doing the African presence in Asia, ancient Asia. So these are, again, powerful discussions. Make sure you're a part of this discussion. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. The last time we did the video on the Africans in ancient America and the presence of it, that video right now just on YouTube alone is over 93,000 views. We got to help out somehow, family. Please, like and share these videos. It's very important to get this information out. We have a couple of things we want to talk about first before we bring in Dr. Rashidi. It's really important, when you like and share these videos, that it doesn't really cost you anything. It's free. It's also an effort to keep going with the upkeep in terms of one of the things we talk about in terms of solutions. We see cooperative economics as a very important, viable aspect of something we can implement today. And what does cooperative economics look like? Cooperative economics looks like, supporting these various Black establishments, Black businesses, and so forth. So, we really want to drive that point home before we get into this, because these discussions are very important. And as we always say, all the time, we got to give the elders the heartbeat props. We got to support them. Just recently we lost one of our greats, Dr. Patricia Newton, Nana Patricia Newton. We definitely want to give a, great Madase P to her. Extremely many thanks. She was a huge supporter in terms of what we do here at HAPI. She was a huge supporter of HAPI Talks. So was Dr. Runoko Rashidi, who's here with us now. So make sure we support him in a very, very real way. And supporting these platforms is extremely, extremely, extremely important. We can't emphasize that enough. And the importance of just, again, cooperative economics. When we think about cooperative economics, we look at how this film was put together, and we talk about just supporting HAPI and other Black institutions and Black platforms. And when you do that, this energy that is done is turned around and just given to just, other institutions. HAPI was produced by, the help of a Black film company, Tahuti Films. You definitely got to go like and check out what they're doing. Go to the brother's website. It's a family-owned business. Extremely, extremely important to support Tahuti Films. It's my brother Seed Haru, his wife Akmari. They're doing some tremendous works. The boy's a master, what he does. Like one of the best DPs out there. You definitely need to go check him out and see what he's doing. That's for real. If anyone saw HAPI understands just how powerful this is and just the level of skill, Seed has. So, also the shirts that we have in terms of our merchandise piece, Nubia Apparel, so my man Gerald Imhotep, you got to check Nubia Apparel out, see what they're doing. They're doing some powerful things. Extremely important to see what, how they move about in terms of just, their level of skill. I've known my man Gerald for a long time. And when we decided to do the HAPI shirts with the HAPI principle on it, or the glyph of the HAPI principle, was like, yo, I went right to the main source. But he has a whole clothing line. You got to go check him out. Again, nubiaapparel.com. Extremely, extremely important, extremely powerful. This brother has a lot to offer. Also, when we think about in terms of just our communication, our flyers, my boy Mike, he designed we had these campaign going throughout New York City here, where the HAPI poster was posted throughout the city on bus shelters and on phones, kiosks, and so forth. My man Mike, 360 Media, did it, as well as the DVD cover of Nubia, Tekken, and HAPI. You got to go check him out as well. We think about the HAPI movement and our newsletter and development. We're really serious about, just supporting the youth in terms of what they're doing and how do we encourage them to do better. Part of the HAPI movement is influence the youth, and that's what it's all about. Definitely influence the youth and keep that going. 2/5 of the newsletter supported by, the youth. So we definitely want to keep that going and keep that going strong. One of the other parts of this and that we're doing actively is we talk about just influencers and people who are actively a part of this and how we can support them. You can support us, we can support them, and we can just keep that circle going, because that's 6 hours of the dollar circulating in the community. We got to put an end to that. And the way we put an end to that is by supporting Black businesses, because it's not going to work. And if we're talking about solutions, forget about the problems. What is one of the solutions we can implement? Solution we can implement, again, is cooperative economics. So, with that, one of our earliest supporters in terms of affiliates, in terms of what we're doing, is, my man Rev Shock Matthews, Philippe Shock Matthews. Go check out his platform. He's considered the Oprah of the internet in terms of his interviewing skills. Powerful platform, powerful brother. You definitely got to go check this platform out. If you're not subscribed to it, please go do so. It's very, very important. We have others like African History Network, Sinetta TV, who's a big part of it as well. I just want to go back for a quick second, in terms of the affiliates, and just kind of talk about them and, who they are. This way we give them the proper, respect due, because these people are extremely important to us. Like my man right here, Michael Imhotep, if you don't know him, African History Network. This brother now have a long history. Even before HAPI came out 10 years ago with just Nubia and the Tekken, he was a huge supporter in terms of what we were doing, and always would call me and contact me. Never tried to bootleg anything. Like Taki, send me like 10, 15 DVDs, and I would just do it. So he was a, great brother. Definitely another huge platform. You might want to go check that out. Other one is a huge supporter is King Simon. Definitely want to make sure we talk to our brother King Simon. Go check out what he's doing. He's doing a lot of great things. Another huge supporter, great person. These are just good people. You know what I mean? You definitely want to support them in a huge way, family. And, we want to keep this going. And these are the people that we often talk about, and who's a huge, I guess, in the background, the back end stuff, just tremendous people. Another one is Asar Imhotep. He's in HAPI, but he has his own platform, and a tremendous brother. One of the, in terms of like contemporary scholars, huge, tremendous. Somebody you want to get to know, somebody you want to make sure you're following. Sometimes he flies under the radar, but this brother's powerful. And he's powerful. He's a genius. He really gets into the language, and he can really, really dissect, the African culture in terms of the linguistic aspect of it. and also a great historian as well. Another person is Dr. Maat, the sister, also a very powerful sister. She's been with us from day one. She and I will go back years, many years, just doing things, collaborating on a lot of different things. Definitely want to go check out Dr. Maat. And lastly, we signed out of TV, his brother, gets a lot of, I guess, bad press about a lot of different things. But, I will say one thing about Sinai, he's a real hardworking person. And definitely shout out to all of them. Much love and respect to everybody. You know what I'm saying? And we definitely got to, again, deal with cooperative economics in a big way. Like I said, last time we did this video with Dr. Runoko Rashidi, we had over 93,000 views just on YouTube. That means all the platforms combined, we're probably a little about 100,000 less than really a month. But with that being said, it doesn't really necessarily show in the total number of followers and subscribers. So come on, family, please, let's step it up. Also, lastly, the next screening, for those who have not seen the movie, and I can honestly assure you, you will not be disappointed when you see the film. Everyone loves it. Film is very different than other docs in terms of the way it was made. A lot of HAPI was shot actually on location in Egypt, in Ghana, all throughout the United States, through Europe. So it's a very different film. Our next screening of HAPI, Saturday, November 21st at 7 p.m. Go to www.hapifilm.com to get your tickets. Again, hapifilm.com to get your tickets, HAPIFILM. And if you just do not want to wait for that, you can go to the website. You can get a DVD, which is available, or if you will get it more on expedient methods, you can go also to the website and you can get a digital copy, which you can watch anytime, any place. You get that right now, just watch it if you don't feel like waiting for that. The only difference between the DVD and the digital copy is the only difference between the DVD, digital copy, and the screening comes with the panel discussion. We got the powerful panel discussion that follows immediately, right? If it was no COVID and we were out doing the theatrical tour, we would have the panels after we watched the film. This situation with these movie screenings, we simulate that when we have the Zoom panel discussion, which is only, again, for ticket holders, for people who actually paid for the screening. If you have a DVD or a digital copy, you don't see that. So just want to make sure we understand that and that was clear. So family, that's pretty much it in terms of what we're discussing right now. Again, make sure we like this video, share it, just get it out there. We got a few people in the building right now, getting everybody, excited because we got a great discussion about to happen tonight. Want to give a couple quick shout outs. Shout out to, all the HAPI supporters, Michelle Drew, Damon Miller. I see King Simon and the family. Peace. We would definitely want to give them people shout outs and that's really important. So without any further ado, we're going to bring in Dr. Runoko Rashidi.
Oh, greetings, brother. How are you tonight?
Greetings. I'm doing well. We just want to get everybody kind of like in place, in their seats, ready to go with this fantastic interview we have ready tonight. There's a lot of things going on in the world today, and we kind of, to understand where we're going, we look at our past and go back in the past and understand who we are. So this discussion tonight, we're going to center on the African presence in early Europe. But before we get into that discussion, I understand you have a webinar series that centers around that. Can you discuss that for a minute, Dr. Rashidi?
Yeah, well, every month at the end of the month, I do a two-part webinar. The last Friday and the last Saturday of the month, the last Friday evening and the last Saturday morning. This will be the third one. The first one is on one of my favorite subjects, and that was Black women in history and art. And then we did the one last month, which was very successful, thanks to HAPI Talks. I mean, the video just had a tremendous impact. I was astonished. So that was a general one. And this time we began to focus. And this will be the African presence in Europe, and not just ancient Europe, but Europe today. A lot of people are not aware that there is a huge Black population, particularly in three countries, and that is the Netherlands, England, and France, because all of these places were colonial powers. And so all the people that they raped and robbed and pillaged are in those countries now. And, it's very important that we, as Pan-Africanists and Garveyites, understand the global presence of African people. But as the proverb goes, if you know the beginning well, the ending will not trouble you. And so what I hope to do tonight is to kind of introduce it, how the African presence in Europe evolved, and talk about why it's important to us and go over some of the highlights. Now, the webinar itself, it's going to be tough. I can guarantee it'll be historic, and it'll be the most comprehensive overview of African people in Europe probably that's ever been done. I sent you and my dear sister Felicia, I think 20 photographs. Well, in the webinar, I'm going to show about 250 to 300. And then, of course, there's a book that goes with it, which is also called Black Star, The African Presence in Early Europe. So thanks for allowing me to come back and talk about that.
Well, no, thank you. I just wanted to touch on something you said really quick, and I just want to highlight it or underscore it, the most comprehensive, family.
Yeah.
So make sure you sign up for this webinar, and the information we'll make sure we'll keep advertising it. We'll share it with the family. It'll be in the chats, and also, you'll see it across the screen. So with that, Dr. Runoko Rashidi, we want to just understand certain things about, I guess one of my first questions is, why is the African presence in Europe important to us?
Well, we want a global understanding. We don't want just a partial knowledge of self. We want the whole deal. We want the whole nine. And the African presence in Europe is very, very important on a lot of levels. First of all, we get an opportunity to talk about how Europeans themselves evolved. Where do white people come from? Okay, so we deal with that. We can talk about how Europe changed from black to white. We could talk about the African presence or influence in classical European civilizations. Europeans, white folk, love to talk about the glories of Greece and Rome, but there was an African background to Greece and Rome. And so Europe reveals a great deal about an overall sense of knowledge of self. Like right now, for example, you're looking at a head, not a bust, it's a head, it's a vase, not even a vase, it's a head. Let's call it what it is. And this is at Oxford University, and it's of an African woman named Andromeda. You've heard of Andromeda, the Andromeda Galaxy.
Right.
And this is a Greek depiction of this sister. I can call her this sister. In Greek mythology, Andromeda was the daughter of the king and queen of Ethiopia. And so it's interesting to know from a perspective of self-esteem, and especially Black women, that the Andromeda Galaxy itself is named after a Black woman, an Ethiopian princess. And this tells you that at this time in history, Africa, Ethiopia, Kemet, Kush, was looked upon as the cradle of civilization. Africa had not been decimated like it is today. So we're talking about the ancient Africa that we need to know exists, that we got excited watching Wakanda and Black Panther because we saw what Africa might have been. And so now we're looking at that period of what Africa was before the destruction of so much African culture and civilization. This one takes us to Rome. If I can just narrate some of these, jump right in, my brother. After all, it is your show. This takes us to ancient Rome. This is a marble head of an African youth. This is 2,000 years old. Now in Greece, we could talk largely about the impact of African people in terms of Greek mythology. We could talk about Minoan, for example, an African who came to help the Trojans when they were fighting the Greeks, and African women like Medea, the original Medea, and Circe, and so many African figures in Greek mythology. But in Rome, we could see real Black folk. For example, you have an African dynasty at the heart of Imperial Rome. It's called the Severan dynasty, named after the African Roman general, the African born Emperor Septimius Severus. And you have African. Go ahead, my brother. Sorry.
So before we get into Rome, I just want to just look at this from a basis, give us some chronology in terms of the presence of history. So before we're going to get into Rome and Greece and some of those other periods. But I just want to kind of look at how, for example, who were the first people in Europe? And can you elaborate on who were the first people in Europe, who they were?
African people. African people are the original people. In other words, humanity originated in Africa. Most of us know this, and spread all over the world in ancient times, tens of thousands of years ago. And certainly way back in the day, African people migrated from Africa to what is now Europe. And we know this based on the skeletal remains, DNA evidence, etc. Art. African people got caught up in that ice and were transformed into the white people or Europeans that we know today. So you have a physical change, an adaptation to being in the ice for tens of thousands of years. Most scholars agree with this. What is important, I think, even more than the physical change, is a psychological change. And the one scholar that focused on it, I think, more than anybody else is Sheikh Anta Diop in the book, Culture Unity of Black Africa. So you had a man who actually turned cold and adapted psychologically to that ice, became a person with a mentality that said survival of the fittest and might makes right. And even God is against me, a need to compete, a need to dominate, a need to denigrate women. And thus the expression, a dog is a man's best friend. This is what happened to the Africans that got caught up in those Arctic conditions in Europe. And so they were not only changed phenotypically, physically, but they were also changed psychologically. And we are still dealing with that psychosis today that came out of that. And we haven't figured out how to deal with it.
Wow. So
that's very profound. If you think about that for a minute, that really sets the stage.
Right. So can we put some context in terms of like time frame, how long ago that ice age existed, or when we went through that?
I think that we can easily trace the movements, I believe, of African people into Europe 50, 60,000 years ago. But I think it was only much more recently that we can see this phenotypical change, probably within the last 10 to 15,000 years. Now you see these various, I don't know if I should say representations or duplicates, reconstructions that European scientists are providing us with what the first people in Europe look like. BBC has done a marvelous study on that, and maybe we'll get to see some of those photographs. So this is relatively recent. We can say, I think pretty effectively, that for most of the history of the world, Black people were the only people, and that white people are relatively recent entities in the world. This is a reconstruction of what is called Cheddar Man from a place called Cheddar, England, like cheddar cheese. And this set of bones apparently was found well over 100 years ago. But now with science and DNA analysis, they've been able to reconstruct it. And they say, this is what the first people in Britain looked like. This is what the first people in England looked like. And this is only about 5,000 to 8,000 years ago.
Wow. And that was basically those Africans that got caught up in the that last ice age, we're saying.
Yeah,
that's how you
there's no other real way to explain it. And that's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
This is even more interesting in some ways. This piece is from Eastern Europe, Romania to be specifically, I believe. And this is what BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, and their scientists say that the first people of Eastern and Central Europe look like. The only thing that's really odd about it, for me, is there's no facial hair. There's no hair. And I don't know why that is. Maybe they thought the brown or melanated skin would be enough. If they put an afro on the brother's head, it would just drive people crazy. But wow. I mean, Europeans themselves are saying that Africa and Africans are their ancestors. If we could just get comfortable with Africa, everything would fall into place. And that is why I think the work that you are doing and the HAPI movement is doing is so important, is because it's giving us a sense of pride and identity, and it's making us comfortable with our African selves. And there's no price you can put on that. That's absolutely invaluable, because the more you love your history, the more you love yourself.
You hear that, family? It's important. You gotta love your history. And I can just have a personal testimony myself. When I read Destruction of Black Civilization in junior high school, that was the book that changed my life, because it gave me something I didn't have before, and that was Black heroes. And having those Black heroes, it made me love myself, made me look at myself totally different. And there was no looking back after that. And this work that we've been doing is a process of that. Chancellor Williams' great work, Destruction of Black Civilization, I had the privilege of the book just laying around in the house. I decided one day just to pick it up and start reading it. And that really, again, changed my life. So the elder is correct. You know, you love your history, you love yourself. And that's really one of the solutions. You know, we talk about these solutions again. We talked about cooperative economics earlier. but loving yourself is a tremendous, tremendous solution. So really take pride in who you are. You know, with that, Dr. Rashidi, we talked about a lot about the ancient part in terms of how Europe turned from black to white. We want to talk about some of the early civilizations right now. You was getting into some of the Roman aspects in terms of the Black Dynasty. But before we get into Rome, we're going to talk about the predecessor, and that's the Greeks. Can you talk about the African presence in ancient Greece?
Well, even before Greece, you have a civilization called the Minoan civilization. And this developed on the island of Crete. Crete is literally halfway between Kemet and Libya and Greece itself. So you can see just by the geographic location of Crete, how civilization was transmitted from Africa to Europe, not the other way around. And that's very important. So beginning in the 3rd millennium BC, we could say 1800 BC, a little later than that, possibly during a time that will correspond with the 18th dynasty of Kemet, the Tutmosids, Hatshepsut, Akhenaten, Amenhotep III. You have a civilization on the island of Crete that is very much influenced by Kemet. We see African people among the artistic representations of Crete. I'll show those in the webinar. And then from Crete, you have civilization that extends to the European mainland, and that is Greece itself. Greece is important to us because this is what Europeans have traditionally claimed to be the cradle, or if not the cradle, the fountainhead of civilization. And we can see particularly the African influence in Greek mythology. You can see the major Greek deities being profoundly influenced by Kemet. For example, the most important city in the history of ancient Greece is Athens. And the patron of Athens is a female deity named Pallas Athena. Pallas Athena is an offshoot of a deity, a female aspect of God in Kemet called Night. She is a warrior goddess, but she's also a goddess of wisdom. And Pallas Athena is the most important of the female deities, and she's a direct offshoot of Kemet. You can say the same thing about Zeus. Zeus is a derivative of Amun or Amun-Ra. You can say the same thing about Apollo, the sun god, who is a derivative of Heru the elder. But you also see the role of African people in Greek mythology. I've talked about Memnon and Circe and Medea, and there are others. But in addition to that, you have real life figures that I don't talk about as much as I'd like to because I don't have photographs of them. One is a man named Clitus the Niger, or Clitus the Black. He was the cavalry commander of Alexander the Greek. So even when Alexander invades Egypt, his cavalry commander is an African. I just don't have any images of him. But that's a fascinating story. Jay Rogers talks about him. And then we know about people like Aesop, as in Aesop's fables. And so the African influence on Greece deserves a lot more study. Now, Rome is easy. Anytime you want me to roll with Rome, just say the word, because we have a lot of information on Rome. Historical data.
Right. Historical data of Rome. So I just want to just kind of just backtrack for a second, because we talked about the time periods in terms of the Minoan civilization, and you gave a great commentary about around the 18th dynasty, so we can kind of just give it some type of context of ancient Kemet, 17th century BC. Greece in its emergence, its early part of Greece, I guess, with Sparta and Athens. What time period are we looking at in terms of the historical clock?
Well, the first, I guess, it may be called a Bronze Age civilization in Greece, comes to us kind of vague, but about 1200 BC. This would be around the same time that you have in Kemet also. We can make these connections. The people called the peoples of the sea. These Mediterranean pirates who invade Kemet in the 19th and 20th dynasties. Well, this time apparently is about a movement of nomadic white people in the Mediterranean and in Europe itself. And so you have these early Greek city-states, and we know the names, again, of some of the heroes or personalities from mythology. Agamemnon, Ajax, Achilles, Odysseus. So we think that this will be anywhere from around 1200 to about 800 BC. And then after that, you begin to hear about the cities like Sparta, or the city-states, or Athens or Corinth, etc. Then you begin to get on more firmer historical footing.
Okay. So we talked a minute ago about Rome, and obviously the Roman Empire was very vast, but we know Rome. There would be no Rome without the African presence. Could you please elaborate on the African presence in ancient Rome?
Well, first of all, the Romans themselves occupied Kemet for 500 years, 5 centuries. The Romans were in Kemet, imbibing the knowledge of the ancient Africans and exploiting the agricultural. That's what you talk about in the documentary, exploiting the agricultural productivity of the Happy Valley. Okay, but also Africans appear as individuals in Rome in a clear fashion. For example, you have 3 African popes. You have Saint Victor the First, Saint Miltiades, and Saint Gelasius. You have some of the most important of the theologians are African: Saint Cyprian, Saint Augustine, Saint Tertullian. Dr. Ben taught us about that. You have African gladiators. You have African Christian martyrs in the Colosseum. By the 2nd century AD, more than 1/3 of all the members of the Roman Senate were born in Africa. But you also have famous personalities like the writer Terence Afar, Terence the African. This brother gave us 2 expressions that we still repeat today, at least many of us do, and they are quintessentially African. One is, where there's life, there's hope. That's so African, because no matter how difficult it is, we're going to get through this. We're going to survive this. Tomorrow's going to come. And African gave us that expression: where there's life, there's hope. And another thing quintessentially African, and I'm not sure if it's good or bad or both, and that is, I am a man, and therefore nothing human is alien to me. The idea of embracing other things, being open, and that's something that other people have exploited, this sense of Ubuntu, that we are the parents of humanity, and everything comes from us, and everybody is our children, and nothing is alien to me. That's very, very African, and that was uttered by a Black man in ancient Rome.
Could you talk about this empire here, Dr. Rashidi?
I'm sorry?
About St. Maurice. Could you elaborate a little bit on St. Maurice here?
Well, St. Maurice takes us to another phase. St. Maurice comes a little later, but he is in the mix all at the same time. Now, St. Maurice, who became the patron saint of the Holy Roman Germanic Empire, one of my favorite personalities in the history of Europe, was actually born in Egypt about 1,700 years ago. And he in a place called the Thebaid, in what is now Luxor, that area, Upper Egypt, Kemet. And he becomes the commander of a Roman legion. It came to be called the Theban Legion, Thebes. And they are ordered to go to a place in northern Switzerland, the legion, and suppress an uprising against the Roman Empire. Maurice is a Christian. The name Maurice means like a Moor. The word Moor means scorched. Maurice is a Christian, and he realizes that the people he's supposed to suppress are also Christians. So he refuses to obey the emperor's order, and he's killed. His legion is decimated. And there became a cult following St. Maurice. So by the 13th century, St. Maurice is the patron saint of the Holy Roman Germanic Empire. And in many cases, he's portrayed as black as a lump of coal. Now, this piece right here is particularly important because we not only see St. Maurice as a saint, but also a knight. And not only a knight, but a knight in shining armor. Perhaps this is where the notion comes from. This is from the 16th century. And this is right there in your neck of the woods. This picture is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. So you have a brother with the German imperial eagle, hat cocked to the side, swagger for sure, in silver, bright silver armor with a sword by his side. This is the African presence in Europe that we don't see, that we don't know about. And to me, it's very, very exciting. We want to tell our story in such a manner that we get people excited, especially young people. We want them to know what we've done and embrace it and then say, if African people did great things, African people can do great things. And that is the value of history. Otherwise, it's just dates and facts and figures that don't mean too much.
Right. So we talked a little bit about the Roman, I hate to say conquest, but the Roman acquisition of Kemet in the 1st century BC. St. Maurice, what time period would that be?
St. Maurice is much more recent. St. Maurice comes to us in the 4th century BC. That's when he is supposed to have lived, but it's about 800 to 900 years later that his status is elevated all over Central and Northern Europe in particular, all the way from, let's say, France and Italy, all the way to the Baltic states like Estonia and Latvia. So this is about 600 or 700 years ago when St. Maurice reaches the peak of his fame.
Peak of his fame. Him living, we're looking at the 4th century AD,
Yeah.
400 AD. Okay, so that's pretty much about 100 years before Justinian. The reason why I bring in Justinian because I just want to talk about the expansion of Christianity, particularly through Kemet and what that looked like to our history in terms of closing down the temples. Can you elaborate on that briefly?
Well, the Romans come in with the suicide of Cleopatra VII. I believe that's 30 BC. And they occupied Kemet for about 500 years. During this period of time, you still have the Meroitics, the civilization of Meroe, which is in Nubia or Sudan. So Maurice comes out of that particular period. And over a period of time, the Roman Empire begins to decay. It's fractured. You have one capital in Constantinople, which becomes Istanbul, and you have another one in Rome itself. It begins to decay, as most civilizations will, and Europe falls into what they call the Dark Ages. And then a very important thing happens that Maurice kind of comes out of. You have the people called the Moors, and the Moors are Black people in Northwest Africa that go into Europe. First time we find them, they're fighting alongside Hannibal. And then they fight in the Roman armies. And then we find them resisting the Arab invasions of North Africa around 700 CE, 700 years in the Common Era. They are defeated. They convert to Islam. They invade Europe in 711, and they dominate the whole of Southern Europe for hundreds of years. Eventually, the Moors are defeated, and the Moors are dispersed throughout the whole of Europe. And the story of St. Maurice becomes a part of that, because Maurice is not a Muslim, he's a Christian. But the name Maurice means like a Moor. And so all of these stories, all of these chapters in history are really interconnected. Now, what you're looking at right now takes us to the Italian Renaissance, the Renaissance in Italy. And it's particularly important in Florence, Italy. And you have two very powerful families. Now we're talking, let's say, from around 1200 years in the Christian era to about 1500. And you have two very powerful families. One is called the de' Medici family. And the de' Medici family was the most powerful. And they are important to us because you have an African member of that family, Alejandro de' Medici, whose father was a cardinal, we think, who became a pope, and his mother was an African woman. Okay, and Alejandro de' Medici became the Duke of Florence from 1529 to 1537. So nearly 500 years before Barack Obama, you have a Black man who is the ruler of a modern Western state. The second most powerful family in the Italian Renaissance is the Pucci family. And what you're looking at right now is the coat of arms of the Pucci family. And this is what might be called a blackamoor. I don't know what that means. I've been doing research. I don't know if they themselves were Moors or they fought the Moors, but whatever the case, and I've done a lot of research, whenever you find the Pucci family, it can be on their dinnerware. It can be at their palace. You always find this image of a Black man, a Moor, with a headband.
Wow, that's powerful. You know, Dr. Rashidi, we kind of got a little ahead of ourselves because the Moors, we wanted to kind of keep this in context and keep moving forward in history and kind of follow that timeline. But right before we get into the Moor civilization, I do have some questions about that. We want to kind of go back to, again, the influence in terms of what came out of Africa from the Kemetic side. And there's a very legendary, I would say, story, but there's some information that's been circulating for a long time. I just wonder if you can get some context to it. And is there a relationship between the legendary figure of Sosostris and the famous king Herodotus talked about that conquered, Europe? And Diodorus also talked about as individual as well. Is any truth to that?
Well, Sesostris, that's a Greek name. Anytime we have a name like Tutmosis, Osiris, Isis, Sesostris, that's Greek with that IS sound on the end. And there he is. There are several kings with that name. The African name I say is Senusret, Senusret. They come to us in the 12th dynasty. And Senusret III right here, the brother with the big Barack Obama ears, will come to us about 1800 BC. And by all accounts, he is a great militarist. He's a conqueror. He conquered deep into Europe in the Caucasus Mountains. And apparently left a garrison there to guard the territories that the Africans, there he is again, this one is in Munich, Germany, that the Africans subdued. Now, this also figures in Greek mythology because this area is called Colchis. And the people who lived there were the Colchians. And they were the guardians or possessors of the golden fleece. If you know your Greek mythology, you know there's a man named Jason. Jason gets 40 men, the Argonauts, to go get the golden fleece. And it is in the exact same area where Senusret III conquered that the golden fleece was supposed to be located. So all kinds of Greek and Roman writers, beginning with Herodotus, Diodorus Siculus, St. Jerome, many others attested to an African community in that part of the world in ancient and not even so ancient times. So a lot of times I think when we look at mythology, we can find a substance or kernel of truth. And that's just one of them right there. So it's good that you pointed that out.
Wow, that was powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, the Moors. And this is such an interesting topic because it causes so much contention in the community. So every time that word comes up, it's always raised a lot of eyebrows. A lot of people want to know about who the Moors were, where they come from, whether it's America, America, America and all this different stuff like that. So it's just so much information, misinformation, disinformation, there's so much things about the Moors. So we want to come to you as one of the experts to talk about this topic and shed some light on it. So with that being said, could you please talk about the Moors and who they were and what did they do?
Well, the Moors are very important to us. The Moors are like the African presence in the Olmec world or Kemet, or the African presence in ancient China or Southeast Asia or South Asia. It's one of those seminal discussions. And the Moors have a huge impact on the world because it's after the defeat of the Moors that you have in Europe what's called the Age of Exploration. You have the emergence of Ferdinand and Isabella of Aragon and Castile and Christopher Columbus. And this is to mark a fundamental turning point in history. But first, the Moors. First time we hear about the Moors, first of all, the word Moor is a term that was applied to the Black populations of Northwest Africa by the Greeks and Romans. They use the word Mauri or Morse, M-A-U-R-I or M-A-U-R-U-S. It meant scorched or black. Again, we find them first fighting in the army of the Carthaginians alongside Hannibal Barca, the great Carthaginian general. And they are famous for they were cavalrymen, they rode horses, and they were a cavalry contingent in the Carthaginian army. Eventually, the Carthaginians are defeated. In fact, that's an important point to make out too, because the European who defeated, or who engineered the defeat of the Carthaginians, became known as Scipio Africanus. People come to me all the time and say, Runoko Rashidi, I don't want to be called an African because Africa is named after a Roman general. That's just silly. The Roman general got his name from Africa. He did not name Africa, Africa named him. So then you find the Moors fighting alongside the Romans. And there's a lot of evidence of that. And when the Moors served their entire term, if they survived the term of their military duty, they would be put in places to settle like Romania and Croatia and Serbia. And so even in ancient times, you have Moorish communities in Central Europe. Next time we find them, they are back in Africa with resisting the Arab invasions of North Africa in the late 7th century. And they are led by a woman named Al-Kahina. That may be a title, like I think it means a prophetess. So this African woman led the most determined resistance to the Arab invasions of Africa, and she was a Moor. She is ultimately defeated, and she tells her sons to convert to Islam. This is the story. And they became a part of the triumphant surge of Islam, of Muslims into Spain in 710 and 711. The Moors and Arabs, the Muslims defeat the white Spanish Christians and push them into the caves of northern Spain, and where they began what they call the Reconquista, this 800-year battle that they waged to take their land back from the Moors. The Moors reintroduced Europe to the light of civilization after the fall of the Roman Empire. They reintroduced things like basic human hygiene, how to eat with a fork, to change clothes from time to time, cleanliness. They introduced apples and oranges. They introduced advanced forms of mathematics. They brought all of these things, and they gave Europe a new golden age. The first great center of the Moors is a place called Cordoba, and then Sevilla, and finally Granada. And in 1492, under relentless pressure, the Moors, under a brother, his name escapes me. I can't think of his name. I'm trying to remember the last leader of the Moors. At any rate, he surrenders the keys to the city of Granada in a place called the Alhambra to Ferdinand and Isabella, the king and queen of the major Christian kingdoms in Spain. And the Moors were defeated after that. And it's after that that you have the rise of Spain and Portugal and the age of exploration and the age of enslavement. It all comes after the defeat of the Moors in 1492.
So you mentioned Isabella and Ferdinand. That's the same Isabella and Ferdinand that was connected to Christopher Columbus?
Exactly. Especially Isabella. She was a patron of Columbus. In fact, I can take you to the Alhambra and Granada and take you into the throne room and show you where the Moors surrendered. In fact, the leader of the Moors, the mother of the leader of the Moors, rebuked him. And she is supposed to have said, "You weep like a woman for a city you failed to defend like a man." So you have the defeat of the Moors, the surrender of the Alhambra, but you also have in that very room where Columbus talked to Isabella about the importance of how they could benefit from the transatlantic slave trade. It is in that very room. And I tell you, my brother, it's like you can feel evil in that room.
Wow. So I just got to understand something. This is like a pictorial representation of the history. Is it in images, like paintings? Like when you say this, what does it look like?
Well, I'll show it in the webinar, but I'm saying there's an actual building where you have a throne room, and this is where the Moors surrendered, and this is where the transatlantic slave trade was plotted and planned. Columbus thought that they could generate enough money for the Europeans. And remember now, Isabella is a fanatical Christian. And what she wants to do more than anything else is launch another crusade to Jerusalem to take, in her mind, the Holy Land from the infidel Muslims. And Columbus convinced her that they could make enough profit from this traffic in human beings to finance another crusade. And I can take you into the room if I were to take you on a tour to Spain, as I've done many times, and take you into that very room. So in the website, to suffice with a photograph of the building.
That's something we definitely got to take that trip. Just backtrack for 1 second. We talked about Carthage for a second and Africanus, the general. We have 1492, the defeat of the Moors, Alhambra. We got that. We'll just go back to the emergence of the Moors fighting against with Hannibal against the Romans. What years is this Hannibal? What time period is this?
Okay, let me give you the dates. You have 3 wars with the Carthaginians and the Romans. They're called the Punic Wars. And the last one ends about 50 BC. So that's the last defeat of the African city-state called Carthage. The Romans built a new city of Carthage, but it was a Roman city on the ruins of the destroyed one. So you have the Punic Wars that, let's say, go from around 150 BC to 50 BC. And the last 2, Hannibal was particularly important in those wars. And then, as I say, after that, Rome becomes dominant. They subdue Kemet. and all of North Africa. And so this when you have the preeminence of the Moors, the preeminence of Rome, and the Moors are fighting in the Roman army. We can particularly find the Moors in the Roman armies during the reign of a Spanish emperor in the 2nd century, since dates are important, under a king named Trajan, Trajan. And if you go to Rome, there's what's called the Trajan column, this long column, and you can see more soldiers on horseback on that column.
You know, and I'm just thinking in terms of this. So we have this Black Empire and Carthage, and also you have Cleopatra and the Egyptian or Kemetic Empire just sort of next door, and they're both fighting the same enemy, but it seems like they're fighting them separately, as opposed to, I guess unifying, because it's almost in the same time period, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm, as you said, basically around 50 BC, they fighting the Punic Wars, and 30 BC is when Cleopatra died. So I'm just thinking maybe it's around the same time period, basically with the same issues. Would that be correct?
I'm not sure of any. That's a good question. I'm not sure if anybody's really ever made a direct connection between Kemet and Carthage at that time. Now, Carthage, which means the new town, was founded in 814 BC by people from what is called Phoenicia, and a particular Phoenician city-state. Phoenicia is on the east coast. The western coastal periphery of the Mediterranean Sea, and what is now Palestine and Israel. That's Phoenicia, and the part direct on the west coast is Canaan. That's Canaan land. And so you have a group of colonists, pioneers, explorers that go from there to North Africa and what is now Tunisia in 814 BCE. And they integrate with the indigenous African population, and that becomes the basis of Carthage. The Carthaginians first fight the Greeks, and then they fight the Sardinians, and then they fight the Romans themselves. And as you pointed out, the last battles of the Punic Wars were at the time of the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Kemet. One thing about that, though, is it is interesting. If you go to Sudan, and one of these days I'm going to take you onto Sudan, then you're going to really see something. And we're going to go to the area called Meroe, or Meroe. And there you will see a particular temple where elephants were trained. And I'm confident that that's where Hannibal got his elephants, the African war elephants, directly from Meroe, which is south of Kemet. But I don't see a direct relationship between Kemet and Carthage at that time. We need to explore that some more.
Yeah, and the point I'm thinking of is when we just think of unification, and coming together for a common cause. It seems like they absolutely had a common cause. Do that, and maybe at a time when they were both being subdued by the same enemy. Very interesting. That's something we need to look into further. So we talked about the Moors. We gave a great context about that. But the last question on the Moors is, why are the Moors important to us?
The Moors are important to us because they are the bringers of civilization for the second time to Europe. And I think this is very, very important. You always talk about context, and I agree. There are many different. History is not monolithic. History is not finished. The past is not dead. So you have different movements of Africans into Europe at different times. Maybe the most important thing from a historical perspective in terms of Africa and Europe, there has always been a relationship between Africa and Europe, always. And the Moors were perhaps the most important aspect of that, because again, after the fall of the Roman Empire, they brought Europe out of the Dark Ages. They re-civilized Europe, and they became, I think that they provided the technological know-how that enabled those Europeans to have those ships and those compasses and those navigational skills that allowed them to traverse the world and usher in this age of exploration. They call it in an age of misery for us. The enslavement, the colonization of the Americas, et cetera, et cetera. That's why the Moors are important.
Wow, that's powerful. One of the things I can just add to that is the number system in terms of we use today, the numerals, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are actually ancient Arabic numbers that the Moors introduced into Europe and thus was given, to the West. The numbers that we use in our current system of writing came from, the ancient Arabic numbers, which were introduced by the Moors.
Very good.
So it definitely just a lot of contributions in terms of, like you said, taking Europe out of the Dark Ages and enlightening Europe, and thus leading to what we are today in our present day society, how things are set. So, again, influence, tremendously important. Talked about the African presence in Greece and Rome, obviously the Moors. I want to get to more kind of, spiritual development and talks about terms of like religion. And one of the things that first come to mind is the Black Madonna and its presence there. And I want to talk about who are the Black Madonnas and the Black Virgins of Europe.
Well, the Black Madonna or Black Virgin, both names mean the same thing. These are modern day depictions of Aset and Heru. We talked about the Nile Valley influence on Kemet. I'm sorry, how do we put it? The influence that Kemet had and the Nile Valley itself, the HAPI Valley, had on Europe in so many ways, and the Romans were there. And you have, in fact, I'm going to do a presentation pretty soon, I don't know when, called The Daughters of Aset. And Aset was the role model for women in the Nile Valley. This is Isis. And of course, we know the story about how she had the child through the Immaculate Conception, Heru. Well, the Romans adopted that and transformed that into what we now call the Black Madonna child, or actually the Black Virgin of the Virgin Mary and the infant Jesus. The Romans conquered all these pagan people, and they introduced this. I think that I'm kind of scattering now. How do I put it? I'll just be succinct. The Romans scattered the worship of Aset and Heru all over Europe, and that evolved into what we call the Black Madonna and child. The Black Madonna is the superstar of the cult of Mary. She is the most venerated icon in all of Europe. And because she is Black, it is thought that she is able to perform miracles. And there have been about 500 documented cases of these Black Madonnas in Europe. Now, the one you're looking at now is probably my favorite. And this is from Lake Zurich in Switzerland. She's called the Swartz Madonna, the Lady of the Dark Wood, Our Lady of the Hermits. And she is literally thought to be able to perform miracles. And I've seen these all over Europe, and brother, they're absolutely fascinating. And each one of these is connected with a series of miracles. For example, there's one outside of Halle, or outside of Brussels, Belgium. And this particular Madonna in St. Martin's Cathedral is supposed to have stopped an invading army by catching 105 cannonballs in the lap of her skirt, and that stopped the army. You don't believe that, and I don't believe it, but the cannonballs are on display around the Madonna. So it's fascinating that you have this Black image of the Madonna and child, and at the same time, Black people are treated in a racist fashion in these very countries. I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. It makes absolute sense. You mentioned 2 locations. Could you give a couple other locations where we can find the Black Madonna child in Europe?
The country that has the greatest percentage of Black Madonnas is in France. And a lot of the churches where the Black Madonnas were located along the routes of the Crusades. And some of them are very, very, very important. For example, you have one at a place called Le Puy. Joan of Arc used to pray there. The Second Crusade was launched from there. It's one of the most important ones. You have another one in a place called Chartres. You have another one called the Black Virgin of Paris. And these are Madonnas that I've seen with my own eyes. Of course, maybe the most famous one in the world is in a place called Częstochowa in Poland. And this is the Queen of Poland. There's an icon, small painting this big, with the Black Madonna in there. And she is literally considered the Queen of Poland. And people treat her like, and these Madonnas, like they are living, breathing entities. They changed their clothes. They put on fresh jewels. The Black Madonna in this part of the world, in Poland, the Queen of Poland became famous with the labor movement called Solidarity that threw off communist rule in Poland. That's one of the most important ones. You have others in various parts of Italy. You have them scattered all over Europe, and they are an absolutely fascinating subject. Here's a good reference book besides my own work, Black Star, the African Presence in Early Europe. There's a very good book called The Black Virgins of Europe, or The Cult of the Black Virgins, by a man named Ian Begg. And I think sisters in particular are very drawn to it because women have been so denigrated in religion and in the world. And so here you have a symbol of Black womanhood at its highest height.
Wow, that's powerful. I'm getting a lot of feedback here. While you're doing that, I just wanted to kind of go into the next question. I think I'm putting some headphones on. I'm getting this drawback here. And this is really important because when we think about the Black Madonna and the power of it, when did these images begin to transform from Black into white that we see today? When did that transformation take place?
Well, that transformation is going on as we speak. You know, for example, the last one that I saw was in Marseille, in France. And I went into church to find it. And there was a white Madonna on the main floor. If you wanted to see the Black Madonna, you had to go into the basement. And so the transformation is still going on there. But in most of these places, it's the Black Madonna that is still preferred. And you should see the level of veneration and adoration. Now here you can see three of them. You can see a statue of Aset and Heru suckling the child. And then you can see another one. Actually, this one, I believe, is either in Ethiopia in the center or in Eastern Europe. And then we see the one that most of us are familiar with today. But again, the Black Madonna remains, even now, the superstar of the cult of Mary. I think you have to unmute yourself. I can't hear you. But looking at this photograph, it does make me wonder if we could project into the future 500 years from now, what would the next variation of it be? History is always evolving, always changing. It's never static. This is a very, very important lesson. And also in terms of Europe, I repeat once again, African people, Black people were never invisible. They were always an important part of Europe on some level or another. I can't hear you, my brother. I believe you're muted.
With the headphones in out. So we'll move it on. Okay, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So we look at just in terms of the importance of the Black Madonna, we want to kind of talk about some of the famous people of African heritage that were in Europe, that were in European history after the fall of the Moors. Could you talk about some of them?
Yes, several of them stand out. We've already talked about Alejandro de Medici. There are people like Ibrahim Hannibal. Ibrahim Hannibal was born in what is now Cameroon, near Lake Chad, around 1680 or so. And he's I think the son of a king. He's a prince. And he is captured and he ends up in Europe, and ultimately he ends up in what is now St. Petersburg in Russia. And he is adopted by Tsar Peter I, also known as Peter the Great, who was enamored of this boy and named him his godson. So this enslaved African child becomes the godson of the Tsar of Russia. And he sends him to France for a military education, and the brother becomes famous in Russian history. But his fame is eclipsed by his maternal great-grandson, and that is Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, who was the father of Russian literature. This is not Pushkin that we're looking at now. Pushkin is the Shakespeare of Russia, and he's the one who popularized the Russian language. So Pushkin is the father of all things Russian. He is the national poet or writer of Russia, and he gloried in his African ancestry. This is the child, Ibrahim Hannibal, and that's Tsar Peter the First. This is a very rare photograph. All these are rare pictures. There was a contemporary of Pushkin who was born in 1799 and who died as a result of wounds inflicted upon him in a duel in, I believe, 1837. He wrote poetry and prose. It is said he had a vocabulary of 20,000 words. He was a bad brother. He's my god of writing. Whenever I'm ready to start a new book or an important essay, I put my picture of Pushkin right in front of me and I make him my profile picture. But there's another person that is even more famous to most of us in the West, and that is Alexander Dumas Père. Now, Alexander Dumas Père is the author of The Count of Monte Cristo, The Man in the Iron Mask, The Three Musketeers. He gives us the expression, one for all and all for one. It gives us the expression, your work may be finished. I mean, your work may be finished, but your education is never completed. And more important, my favorite expression, and that is, a man's mind is elevated to the status of the women with whom he associates. Alexander Dumas said that. Now, his father's mother was an African woman born in Haiti. So two, perhaps the most important writers in the 19th century in Europe, two of the most influential writers in Europe were men of African heritage. And this is after the fall of the Moors. This is during the height of slavery days in the Americas. And you still have these Africans who exerted tremendous influence.
Wow. I just want to ask you a quick question. Where do you get all these marvelous pictures from? I think it's really important to kind of share with the family the catalog of photographs that you have, how you were able to obtain them.
99.9% of all of these photographs I took myself in a museum or a church somewhere. This is what I've dedicated my life to for the past 15 or 20 years. I think that there are enough artifacts in these museums to document the entire history of African people around the world. This one, for example, is in a gallery in Berlin, a place called the Gemalde Gallery. And this is an African saint named Gregorius Maurice, or Saint Gregory the Moor, and a European saint. This is done in 1480. And this is from a big church in Cologne in Germany. This is important, and I use it in a lot of presentations because it shows that even at this time, that Africans were still portrayed in European art with dignity and honor. Africa had not been subjugated at this time. This is before the impact of the transatlantic slave trade, which is to change everything, to change the way the world came to see Africa. And most importantly, and even now we're struggling with it, the way Africans came to see themselves. So this is a part of my work. This is what the webinar is about, to showcase it. And also my book, Black Star, The African Presence in Early Europe, all original photographs.
Wow, family, you heard there. The elders showed us these great photographs. And that's why I asked him how he got them, because I really want to kind of talk again about the importance of the heartbeat props and the importance of signing up for these webinars. Nowhere else in the world, I guess you can go for yourself, that you're going to see a catalog of important inspirational photographs like this. There's the book there, The Black Star, The African Presence in Early Europe by Dr. Runoko Rashidi. Please make sure you get a copy of that. Extremely, extremely important. Also, we have about 1,000 people in the building. Please make sure we get those likes up. Get those likes up. Please hit that like button, notification button. Please share this video. Extremely important. Got to make sure this information get out. It was a very powerful discussion. I mean, guess what? We're not finished yet. And we want everyone to stay tuned because they have a very special part 2 to this. At the end, we have a surprise guest coming in that's going to bring some other valuable information to the family. So please make sure you stay on, you stay tuned in at the end of the discussion. Very important. Very, very, very important. Okay, Dr. Rashidi, can you talk about Africans in Europe today?
Yeah. The largest concentration of Black folk in Europe today are in 3 countries: England, France, and the Netherlands. If you go to a place like Amsterdam or some of the other cities like The Hague or Leiden or Breda, very large African populations from the colonies in the Caribbean and Suriname. You have Suriname, the former Dutch colony in South America, and you have Curacao especially. But you also have a lot of Africans from the motherland, from Ghana, from Nigeria. That's in the Netherlands. And then in France, of course, France was a colonial empire. France had more landmass than even England did. And so if you go to Paris or Bordeaux or Toulouse or Marseille, but especially Paris, huge African populations. There's a place in Paris called Little Africa. And there you have sisters and brothers from all the former French colonies, from Senegal, from Mali, Benin, Gabon, Togo, Niger, you name it. But you also have Africans. In fact, the brothers that you see me with now, this is a recent lecture I gave in Paris. One brother's from Central African Republic, and the other brother's from Congo, Brazzaville. But you also have lots of Africans in places like Martinique and Guadeloupe. And of course, England is the same way. So you have lots of sisters and brothers from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, from Barbados, from Trinidad, from Guyana, but also lots of sisters and brothers from Nigeria, from Kenya, from Ghana. And so this is very important when we talk about Pan-Africanism and the global African experience. We have to emphasize again and again and again that the fight that we're waging is not a local fight. It's not even a national fight. It's a global struggle to finally destroy global white domination, white supremacy, white race, anti-Black racism, whatever you want to call it. And there are large Black populations in these areas, and they have a lot of the same issues that we do. Racial injustice. When the George Floyd protests ensued after the murder of that brother, you have similar protests all over Europe. Now you have smaller Black populations in countries like Germany, Norway, Spain, and Italy. The ones in Southern Europe, Greece, are treated very harshly. A lot of them are the result of migrants who have made their way across the Mediterranean. They're not wanted there. The economy is bad. And so the sisters and brothers in places like Italy and Greece and Spain, they really have a rough time. A lot of them are from Senegal, Nigeria, Eritrea, Ethiopia. So just like Africans here in Babylon, USA, the Africans in Europe have a very, very hard time in terms of racial injustice and economic discrimination.
Powerful, powerful. So when we talk about the history of the African presence in Europe, could you talk about some of the scholars who paved the way?
Mm-hmm. Well, I always like to talk about that. I always like to talk about the ancestors. The one that stands out more than any other is Joel Augustus Rogers, J. Rogers. Now, his work is, to me, even now, the best of the best. He wrote books like Sex and Race. He has a book called Nature Knows No Color Line. He has these books, World's Great Men of Color. And Rogers actually is the first person that I know of that actually went to Europe, took the photographs, lived there. He is my direct predecessor. And of all the people that I get compared to, I think I take that comparison with the most pride. When I heard he went to 60 countries, I made up my mind I was going to go to 65 and follow in the footsteps of Rogers, because I think each generation should build on the successes of those who came before me. I know you feel the same way. And that's why we have a direct connection here. And so now I'm at 125. And I know Rogers has got my back. I believe that Rogers, wherever I go, says, Runoko, don't worry about it. I got you. I'm looking out for you. All the ancestors do, because we are proud of you and we want you to take it further. And then, of course, even before Rogers, you have a brother named George Wells Parker. Now, George Wells Parker is a Garveyite, and he wrote about the African roots of the Grecian civilization. On April 1st, 1916, this brother, George Wells Parker, delivered a paper before the Omaha Philosophical Society called The African Origins of the Grecian Civilization in 1916. Okay. You have this brother, Edward Scobie from Dominica, who is a close friend of Ivan Van Sertima, who wrote a book called Black Britannia and another book called The Global African Presence. So there are a lot of them. And I know that Edward Scobie and Dr. Leonard Jeffries were very, very close too. So I wanted to share that.
Yes, Dr. Jake talks about Dr. Scobie quite often. So on the subject of books, we understand we have a book. You have a book on this very subject. We alluded to it earlier, and that is the Black Star the African presence in early Europe. Can you discuss the context of that book, please?
We've already discussed it. Everything we've been talking about are the contents of that book. This was a first book first of my books published by the publishing house called Books of Africa, which was a small publishing house in London. I like to have my books published by African publishing houses. And this was done, I believe, in 2013. And now I'm about to expand it and do a revised edition of it. I had the good fortune of having the preeminent, I believe, African scholar in England, a brother named Robin Walker, write a foreword to it, or an introduction, a preface, and a brother who I consider one of our greatest living scholars, and that is Dr. Charles S. Finch, bad brother, who did a foreword to it. So it's my work, but it's also showcasing the work of other scholars and all the things that we've talked about. African presence at the beginning of European civilization, the Moors, the Black Madonnas, Africans in Greek mythology, African presence in the Roman world, Blacks in Britain, Dumas and Pushkin and all the scholars. This book talks about all of that with a lot of original photographs. I don't think anybody would be disappointed to have it in their library.
All right, family, you heard it. Heartbeat Props. Get that book. Make sure you get a copy. Felicia, please put up a copy on the book in terms of, and also Dr. Rashidi, where could they find the book? Very important.
To get the information on the webinar at the end of the month, to get the book, all you got to do is email me, Runoko@hotmail.com, Runoko@hotmail.com, or go to my website, which is drrunoko.com. I'm very accessible. So Runoko@hotmail.com, the email, drrunoko.com, the website, get information about the webinar at the end of the month and how to order the book as well.
Okay, so we got the book and also the webinar. We talked about it in the beginning, but I just want to make sure that we drive the point home. Not everything, because this little discussion is a very short glimpse of what you're going to get out of that webinar. Very important for you to sign up to that webinar. But I'm gonna let Dr. Runoko Rashidi talk about it. And this little conversation we had here was just like a small fraction of what this powerful webinar is going to be about it. So Dr. Runoko Rashidi, please discuss the webinar again, please. Yeah,
we could call this a trailer, as we might say, to the webinar, of which I'm very grateful. It's the 30th and 31st of the month. They're divided into 90 minutes each, and they're sure to run over that. There's a small fee that allows me to continue to do my research. Again, if you go to, if you email me, Runoko@hotmail.com, or go to the website, you can see how to register for it on Eventbrite. Tonight, we were able to show, 16, 18 photographs. On these two presentations, which is divided into two parts, I'm going to show about 250 color photographs, original photographs. I guarantee that many people will not have seen any of them, or at least most of them, and they will fill in a significant chapter about the global African experience. It's not something that you're going to want to miss. It's not like this happens all the time. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end, but mostly it'll be a visual masterpiece of the African presence in Europe from ancient times to today. I'm looking forward to it, and I don't think anybody will be disappointed who participates.
And that's the importance, the participation. And again, we got to support the elders family. Again, we lost one of our great ones recently, Dr. Nana Patricia Newton. We got to support the elders while they're here. There's so much information. Dr. Runoko Rashidi said earlier, he's following the footsteps of great ones. And he stands on their shoulders, and we do the same thing. And, let's get this information now. They have so much to share with us. And let's please take advantage of this information while we have the opportunity to. It's so important. Make sure we get the book. Make sure we sign up for the webinar. I just want to give some testimonies. In fact, some of our members, our HAPI team members, were, I believe, a part of the African Presence in Ancient America webinar. And the producer of the show, Felicia Harden, she marvels over it, talks about how much she's learned. So Felicia can kind of just give her, insight on the last webinar and talk to the family how important it was.
Yeah, so listen, and I didn't even tell you about this, Dr. Rashidi, because I didn't want to like spill the beans. I was going to do my whole presentation here.
Oh, heaven forbid, the beans should be spilled.
Listen, family, you guys have got to get behind Dr. Rashidi, and let me tell you why. For a couple of reasons. So one, this is like part of our HAPI movement. That third tenet that says teach the youth the truth. We're going to pop this off. Okay, we're going to start it, and we want people in the chat to do what we're doing. We have decided at HAPI that we're going to pay for 3 people to make sure that they are tuned in to watch it, Dr. Rashidi, at the end of the month for this one. See, I already got my book because I'm ready. I went to the last one, and let me tell you, I was so happy to see a lot of you guys up in there. So the first 3 people to actually send hapifilm at Gmail and email and say, I'm part of the movement, you will get a ticket to come see Dr. Rashidi at the end of the month. Now, this is important. When you guys are looking at this, you've got to get the kids involved. A lot of us are, learning this for the first time, and what better to learn it is with, your kid. And the other piece about this, even if like if you're like, oh my God, I know some of this stuff, I don't know how to get all this stuff together. All you have to do is just start following Dr. Rashidi. He has it broken down every month. It's enough for you to sit, make your own curriculum. You listen to it, it gets you amped. He tells you where to find all the information. You can also sign up. He has the, am I saying it right? Is it Pantheon or Pandrian?
No, Patreon, a Patreon page, a subscriber page.
The subscriber page, it's peanuts. Okay, it's peanuts for this man's wealth of information. You sign up for that, and you're getting stuff all week, all for the whole month. And so you can literally take, and it doesn't even need to be your child. It can be somebody in your neighborhood, somebody, a niece, a nephew, whoever. But this is how we start getting this work done in a real way. Because I have two kids. One's in high school and one is in middle school. And none of them, I can tell you, neither one of them are getting any type of information like this. So this is how we start teaching, our youth the truth, which is the third tenet of the HAPI movement. So you guys have got to go on there. And remember, the first 3 people, and we'll announce it at the end of the show, the 3 viewers that will get the 3 free tickets to come, 1 free ticket each to come check out Dr. Rashidi at the end of the month. And we suggest that if the price is very economical. So you can literally get a ticket for somebody else. If your child's not, with you, or the kid that you want to help, there's some other place, get them a ticket. This is over Zoom. It is so good. And so I just wanted, say, and a shout out, I saw all those HAPI viewers up in there at the end of last month. It was really super nice. And I learned a lot. It just gives you a framework so that you're not floating around like in the air everywhere, So thank you, Dr. Rashidi. And get the book. Yeah, you got to get the book. You got to get the book with it, okay? Kind of feel like I'm doing a QVC infomercial here because you guys have got to get this, okay? This man has really put his heart and soul into teaching us. And so it's really important that we support him, just like Taki said. Heartbeat props while you're here. I like that.
Thank you, sister.
Yeah, you got to listen to the sister. She put it.
Now, a lot of folk, I have a lot of Facebook pages. And a lot of people are going to be listening. They're going to watch the video. Now, I want you to tell us what we can do to support the HAPI movement. One hand washes the other, correct? Where is together?
You know what? I have to tell you.
The work you're doing.
Yes. So, you had 106 people sign on, and I was like, there's 50 million Black people in the world, and we had 106 people. Family, we got to get this going. We got to get this up. And you gave us such a nice, props, Dr. Rashidi, in part of your presentation.
So what can we do? What can the community do to support the HAPI movement?
Let me tell you, you got to watch the film. You got to go to hapifilm.com, watch this film. You're going to get inspired, and you'll start to see all the pieces are coming together. but it's really, you're like an extension. And like when I was talking to you afterwards, I was like, it's good that we show the film, but then we have to start doing the work, and coming and checking you out is doing the work. And so that's really important. And you keep it low cost for everyone, which is great, which that means there's no excuse. This is like cheaper than that iPhone that just came out 2 days ago. You can watch, I can sign up for the, for the Patreon for the whole year, and I can still see you live at the end of the month every single time. And it would still be cheaper than that phone that doesn't come with headphones. I'm just saying. So you guys have got to, support this, support the film, and then support this brother right here. Very important.
One of the things that stands out for me is we're just about at 9,000 subscribers for YouTube. We are on our march for 10K.
Yeah.
Family, please. I know some of you already subscribed. If you're not, please go to subscribe to all the channels, particularly YouTube. And if you have friends and family, those who who may be interested, share the page with them and tell them to subscribe also to the YouTube page. Extremely important, because this is how we keep it going. This is how we keep the information fresh, and this is how we keep things moving further. Like Sister Felicia said, the HAPI is an essential aspect of this because it will inspire you. You may feel that you've seen other docs before. Similarly, I tell you, HAPI is extremely different. Make sure you go check it out. Very important.
And you know what? Let me just add to this, Taki. The reason why it's like really nice to watch HAPI is because it's all the people are Black. We have a couple of people that aren't Black, but it's all our Black scholars talking. And it's something. It's a feeling that feels very different when you're watching something from your people, because this was definitely made in love, and you feel the love. Just like when you listen to Dr. Rashidi talking, you feel his love for these, for these pictures and for these structures. And this is what we need. This is how I'm gonna keep saying, this is how we move it forward. So you watch the film, you're like, oh my God, this is great. And then you're checking out this brother right here every month. Come on, let's get these kids together. So that's enough. I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
Thank you so much, Sister Felicia.
Yes, go to drRunoko.com, get your tickets, and I'm looking for you guys. Come at the end of the month, okay? And we will announce who won the tickets at the end of the evening. And listen, we're buying 3 tickets. Can somebody in this house buy like 5 tickets? Come on, let's get this going. All right, thank you. I'm gonna go. Love you, Dr.
Love you too.
So, with that being said, family, we talked about the importance of helping each other. Like Dr. Runoko Rashidi said, one hand washes the other. Extremely important, cooperative economics. We've had, throughout the years, tremendous experiences with African unions, Africans coming together, and coalitions of various African groups. And that seems to be the way by which we achieve. It's very, very important. So with that, we want to talk about something that occurred somewhat about 10 years ago, a very monumental event, a historical event, where Dr. Runoko Rashidi and others had the pleasure of being a part of that. So with that, we want to bring in Dr. Leonard Jeffries to kind of express his interest and his knowledge on this monumental event, and just talk about the importance of where it is for us today. Felicia, if you could bring Dr. J in, that'd be great. So we have with us a scholar.
Hey, Doc, how you doing, man?
Leonard Jeffries with us.
Hey, heading toward 84, and I'm looking for more.
It's good to see you, Baba. You're looking good, man.
Pleasure to see you, and certainly it's a pleasure to see the youngster, Brother Taki, and his associate doing their thing. But it's a pleasure for me to, at this particular juncture, to go through our archives and the various important documents that we have. And so most people don't realize how close a relationship, a family relationship, has been developed over the last 50 years with these scholars. And so when you mention Runoko Rashidi, you just can't leave him out there by himself. You got to mention that he's standing alongside of Ivan Van Sertima. And then people will have to say, well, Ivan Van Sertima, yes, he had a special sacred mission to put the studies and whatnot of the Africans in the Americas as a part of this explosion of knowledge. And so he did it. and he produced the works that we can look to, and he had us going to the Americas. And then Sheikh Anta Diop, of course, had given us this whole African world, but somebody decided he wanted to make sure that Asia was a part of the Africans in Asia, the Dalit and other peoples were a part of this mix. And Runoko took that responsibility on. Nobody sat down and said, this is the strategy that we need to have. It was this explosion of African knowledge that each of us made an important contribution to. And we need to have that properly recorded. And so that's what I'm doing now, trying to get my materials ready. And so as I go into culminating in this symbol, I don't want to miss this symbol. In other words, in Senegal, the leader of the Senegalese nation, the president, was given a commission by the other African leaders in the AU to prepare a symbol of where we're going and what we need to be about. And so this enormous monument was created over several years with the support of the various African leaders. At the heart of it was President Wade of Senegal and President Mbeki of South Africa. And so other African leaders made their contribution, and this represents the Renaissance, the rise of African peoples. And it's not the rise of a man, it's not the rise of a warrior, it's the rise of the family. And that's what has been key to our great growth and development over these last 50 or 60 years. It's the family equation. And so you have the Black man rising off of his knees, too much on his knees, praying too much on his knees, shooting crap too much on his knees, doing other things he shouldn't be doing. But this is the image of the Black man rising with power. And he's not rising by himself. He's leaning on his rock, the African woman. And then they are together, and the product of her sacred womb is being held up to the universe. The child is being held up to speak to us for eons of years now. That child is not pointing, it's pointing across the ocean to the New World African. It's not pointing north to Europe. It's not pointing east to Asia. It's not pointing southeast to Mecca. The child is pointing to the Africans dispersed throughout the New World. And so inside this monument is the history of our struggle. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop's work is inside the monument, and that's a beautiful shot to show its enormous impact. But attached to the monument is the great work that others have done, led by Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark and Dr. Asa, and of course the Dr. Theophila Benga and the others. But we've had our compliments. Dr. Rashidi is a compliment. Dr. Jeffries, Rosin, Dr. Jeffries, Leonard are compliments to this explosion. And I was asked to make sure that we had a proper contingent for the Third World Festival. And that Third World Festival was in Senegal. I think I may have been one of the only people who've been to the first one. Rosin and I first went in 1966. And at that time, the African cultural giants were coming together, and they honored Dr. Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop as the two great minds of the African century. And so around that was a whole conference that covered several weeks. And I have the newspaper here, the newspaper in Dakar that has the conference. And I was asked to help bring contingents from the US. And so we were fortunate to get 25 or so of us went to present, another 15 or so of us went to be the replacements. And the person who initiated this fantastic process of these great minds from our African world, the president opened up and welcomed us to Senegal. And then the person who he asked to take a special bow was Dr. Runoko Rashidi. He had his book up, waving his book in the air in terms of the work he had done in Asia. And so that it started off so correct. And because other heads of state were coming, the president of Senegal got a note from his aide de camp. And the note was, 3 other presidents have arrived at the airport, and Excellency, you have to leave in order to welcome them to Senegal. And he did not hesitate. He had so much respect for Dr. Runoko and the work that he has done that he asked Runoko if he would take over the chair and chair the meeting. And that was an unbelievable gesture. And I said, I hope Runoko will do it. And sure enough, he acted as if this was just the thing that you do. And Runoko chaired the whole, this enormous convention. And he continued to do fantastic things at that time. He had a brother, a leader who came from the Pacific Islands, and he introduced him to the conference. You don't know how enormous it was to have this great activity taking place, and we were at the center of it. Runoko initiated a high-flying achievement at that level. Next, it came for Theophil Obenga, Dr. Theophil, to take us high with the next panel. The panel after that was Dr. Wade Noble, and the panel after that was myself and others with Ron Walters and Shelby Lewis, and our brother from Khartoum was there. And then to top it off, the last panel was our special women. It was led by Wade Noble's wife, a beautiful wife, Dr. Vera. And then behind her came my wife. She set such a high standard. Rosin had to reach that standard. And then the African from Senegal came, and others. So we have to understand the important role that we've played. HAPI is continuing this process. And when you go inside of the museum in the monument, the work of Cheikh Anta Diop and the other scholars is there. The African origin of humankind, the African evolution of society, African civilization coming out of the Nile Valley and the other river valley civilizations. So we are on a great and mighty walk led by people in my generations of the Dr. Clarks and the Dr. Benz and my partners, the Asa Hilliards and the Van Sertimus, and Dr. Runoko Rashidi is right there with the best of us. And the sisters are there along with the brothers. So this is truly, for Dr. Clark, it was a great and mighty walk. And we have walked around the world in his tradition. But what we need is what Brother Taki and his partners, Felicia and others, have brought to bear. We need a superhighway into the future using this technology. And so that's what we've inherited from the elders who pushed us in the right direction with their sacred mission. But now we need to go sky high with this technology. So Taki, you got more than you imagine in taking on this responsibility, but you've done it. I've personally traveled the world with you, so I know what you've done. And so this mission is a sacred mission beyond anything we could have put on ourselves. Our ancestors say it's our time, it's our space, and it's our place to be a Pan-African superhighway over troubled African waters. So we can't stop, we got to keep on moving ahead. And as one great African who had his mind messed up and destroyed, but before he did, he left his spirit, Steve Biko. And Steve Biko, leading the children of South Africa as a part of this struggle, Steve Biko said, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And that's been our great responsibility of taking sure and making sure that that mind of the African is restored and allowing Africans all over the world to keep going higher and higher, faster, and bringing that truth to bear on the world. Dr. Diop said, if we cannot put the African truth in the mix, we will not be able to achieve what we know we have to achieve, but we put it in the mix. And with these generations that have connected, have helped to make it so. So I just want to give thanks to be a part of it, and having been blessed to have a partner, Dr. Roslyn. And we just finished a meeting with people talking about a multi-million-dollar African educational center and museum in New York. So things, in spite of the chaos, in spite of the confusion of the Trumps of the world, in spite of the sickness that is there, we have a sacred mission to bring that Africanness to bear, Africanizing our lives, and making sure that people don't forget anybody. Don't forget the Ivan Van Sertima's of the world. He had to do what he did against the odds. And don't forget our brothers like the leaders. Theophilus Benga partnered with Dr. Diop, and that was a beautiful thing because Dr. Diop, he took upon the responsibility of giving us the Nile Valley, but it wasn't easy because there were people who said that the Nile was not Africa. The Nile was the Greeks, the Nile was the Romans, the Nile was other people, the ancient Hebrews. But fortunately, we have been able to have this great movement of empowering ourselves. Knowledge is power. African knowledge is African empowerment. So I just want to give Runoko, he started out slow. He was just hanging around California and the Southwest, and then he just took off. And he wound up going everywhere, bringing this African history, taking people there, and so and handling all the traditions he had, as everybody has. He's handled them, but he never let them get control of him. He still was able to find an African way out of no way. And so, Runoko, hey, Wakanda forever, brother.
Thank you, Baba.
So Doc, I just want to ask a quick question. Going back to the conference. The conference, what year was that?
2010.
Yeah, 2010. That's
almost 10 years ago. Yeah.
And that conference was held in the statue itself, inside the African Renaissance statue?
No, it was held all over Dakar, all over Senegal. It was held at the university in Dakar. It was held in the stadium when you had these dancers coming out. Diouf, the great kora player. I mean, when he came out, it was unbelievable. 30,000 people in the stadium, and here this brother comes out playing his kora, and the spirits were just lifted up. It was held all over Senegal, and it had, the world was there. The people from Brazil were there. The people from other parts of the Caribbean were there. And so these are events that we need to record properly, because that last one, we had a seminal role to play. And the first one, you had people like Wole Soyinka, the great writer of Nigeria, and he had a great play. And we saw at this new theater they created, the Daniel Serrano Theater, Harvest Manor. He was making a critique culturally about leadership in Africa, such as Nkrumah and others who might have missed a step or two. And so you had Wole Soyinka speaking to the world. You had, coming out of that same Daniel Serrano Theater, the real show was in the audience. These Senegalese Malian women, these women wearing all this gold and all the gold earrings. I was busy trying to peep at this and that. Rosin was saying, hit me on the knee. I'm looking at these women and this most fantastic thing. And then all of a sudden they announced that the Dogon dancers are coming out. And I said, oh my God. And then the Kanaga mass, the dancers came and they were tipping the floor with their mask, and Rosin has to interpret all of that stuff. But then after the Kanagas from the Bandiradira cliffs came out, then they had the skyscraper mass. The skyscraper mass that touched the top of the curtain of this new theater. I'm saying that was the first of the activities. It was in Senegal. The second was in Nigeria in 77, Senegal in 66, Nigeria in 77, and then back in Senegal again in 2010. So So if you get into this history, it will be a transformative process.
So Dr. J, these conferences, what I guess what I'm asking is the importance of it. Why the organization? What is the impotence behind these conferences when we organize them?
Well, the knowledge has to be produced, and knowledge has to be organized. It doesn't come out of the air. It doesn't float down from the sky. There's people with heavy think burdens to bear that produce it. And so that symbol of the rise of the African, that's the Renaissance. We're in a rebirth. This Runoko, Dr. Runoko and Dr. Van Sertima and all the others didn't do what they did for money. They didn't do it for fame. There's a sacred mission for us bringing this knowledge to bear. We haven't sold this knowledge out for millions or billions of dollars. It's necessary for our people to come together because, as the Steve Biko reference, I did a book on South Africa and it included Steve Biko. He had his brains bashed out of his head, but he left us with this important statement: the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And then we have flipped it, and we have said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor may be the minds of the oppressed, but the most important weapon in the hands of the liberator is the mind of the oppressed. And so our role has been individually finding our place and making our contribution. And so you have added a flow of knowledge through this Renaissance. And what you've done with HAPI is to give us back this whole river system, Africa rivers. When I teach, I try to teach about the 6 great river systems in Africa. Of course, you have the Nile. That's a composite of the other work and other rivers, such as the Blue Nile and the White Nile, and the rivers coming in from Ethiopia. But then you have the rivers to the south of the Limpopo, and that helped produce African culture and significance. And of course, in the west, you have the Niger River, and its bend, and around it, the civilizations of Mali and Timbuktu, and Guinea and Mopti. And then if you go south, you have the that are Limpopo and whatnot, that are part of the southern dimension of our work. And of course, in between, you have the great Congo Basin, the Congo River Basin. So we have to see that we've been given, like no other generations before us, this knowledge to process it into beating back the enslavement process, beating back the inferiority complex, beating back the devastation of our families and our tradition, the attempt to make Africans into non-people, to take their humanity away. And that's still going on today, as we see in these United States with this Trump mess that's going on. But we can't stay in that position. The spirits have told us that you have a responsibility. And so that monument speaks to it. It's the tallest of its kind. It's more significant than the monument made by the same type of Koreans in Zimbabwe. That's the war memorial. That's the memorial of the people who led the revolution to the revolution in Zimbabwe. And then in Brazil, you had the Italians honoring the Catholic faith. And so they created Jesus the Redeemer over Rio. And it's a most fantastic experience to go up to Corcovado, and then you come to this enormous monument overlooking this bay, this fantastic body of water that is Rio, which is alive and well because of the African revival in Brazil. But the beautiful thing is that monument in the harbor of New York comes out of an African dimension. The Frenchman who called for it was the head of the French Anti-Slave Society, and he was inspired by Black folk taking up arms and fighting for their freedom in the Revolutionary War, in the Civil War period. Jesus the Redeemer. Roz and I had a chance every couple of years to go to Brazil, but when we went in 2003, when I took my nephew Hassan and his wife and whatnot, and whatnot. Jesus the Redeemer, for the first time, they opened up the pedestal that Jesus is on. And Jesus the Redeemer overlooking Rio, given by the Italians, Catholics to the Brazilian Catholics. Jesus the Redeemer is standing on the shrine of Madonna in Rio. So wherever you look, these monumental symbols of the rise of humankind have an African dimension that's extraordinary. And we need to be in the position to be able to put it in the vehicle that you've created, which is using this modern technology. But we have here in this house this statue of the Black Madonna that they were offering people to take away as souvenirs. So wherever you go, this blackness is there. It's a source of our great renewal. It's not a source of us making a whole lot of money looking for a big hit. Even though, yes, that's an example of the Black Madonnas in Czechoslovakia and Poland, in all of these Catholic nations. You have a Black Madonna, but the one that speaks to my heart is the one in Brazil that's holding up the great, because Brazil is one of the largest African nations in the world in terms of population. And so to have that Black Madonna as a part of that tradition, I certainly have been very proud to have been there. But when you go there, the African tradition in Brazil, and I think Runoko needs to take, I see he's taking his groups everywhere, and 2 or 3 times a year. But Runoko needs to go up to the top of the mountain where the spirit of Zumbi found a safe haven and created Palmares. And Roz and I have been there several times. We used to go every couple of years, and it's a fantastic experience. One year I went up there with the Brazilian African greats. Pele, the #1 Brazilian in the world, the great football soccer star. He went up, and I went up at that day. And also Benedicta de Souza, the Black woman representing the female principle of rulership. She was running for the mayor of Rio. They called her a monkey and everything else. She lost that, but then she came back and she ran to be the governor of Rio province, etc. So she went up to the mountain along with Pele and the president of Brazil, and my wife and I and others. So this is an important part of heading up to the mountain. You fly up to Maceió, and then you take a train to the mountain base, and then you take a bus up to the top. And then we got a bus that bus was so rickety. I said to myself halfway up the mountain, it's not going to make it. I said, we got to, I'm getting off. And so when I got off, half the people got off with me. And then we had to spend another couple hours walking up to the top of the mountain. When we got there, they had completed the ceremony for Zumbi. But when these priestess saw us coming, walking up the mountain, they got together, and I have a picture of them right here, 12 or 13 of them getting together with the Babalao. And they said, the spirit of Zumbi has arrived. And they said, we've got to do the ceremony over again. And they did. And they gave me the Ogun beads. And those were the beads of the symbol of war and struggle and thunder and lightning. Those were the beads I wore when I was in the New York State Foley Square courthouse, fighting for our history to be a part of our world. And I went into the bathroom and put my Ogun beads on, and I was ready to continue the struggle. So it's not only the knowledge warfare, it's the spiritual warfare that we have to be about, because our people use this spirit warfare to continue this great and mighty march through time that our people have, that HAPI represents. So everybody should get happy so that we can all get happy, and then there can be some money raised so we can continue this enormous mission of the restoration of the African, who is the founder of the human family and has taken human family to its highest levels. in the past, and there's a future
So
role for us.
thank you
Hey.
very much, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. We're about to close out the show. So before we leave, just Dr. Runoko Rashidi, you got any closing words, anything final you'd like to say?
I
to the
want to
family?
express my appreciation to Dr. J. It's really been a great honor for him to come on. I appreciate all the kind words, and I salute him for a lifetime of service to African people. Dr. J, I cannot thank you enough for what you've done, for what your beautiful wife has done, and for you to come on tonight to share a few words of wisdom is a great honor and something I'm never going to forget. So, asante, brother.
All right. Madasi, in the Akan tradition, we say Madasi P. That's where I've been installed as a chief, and my wife has been installed as Queen Mother. And our great sister, Dr. Pat Newton, second, she was installed there. Marcus Garvey Jr. was installed there. And so many of us have had that linkage to the continent. And so we need to take these blessings and share them with our people who are lost, looking for something in this abyss of materialism. And they can't find it because to have money, it's a material process, a seduction, but you need spirit that will allow you to sustain yourself and your people in the greatest trial and tribulations that you have. And certainly enslavement of Africans was that. And then Runoko went to Asia and brought up the Dalit and other peoples in Asia. And so, I mean, that's a seminal contribution of many that he has made. So, brother, keep on keeping on. And Taki, I'll send you my bill because, there's certain things that but you need to tell the folks that they're getting a lifetime of work from all of these scholars, males and females, old and young, and they need to support you. But send some contributions into your organization. You didn't have to do this, and if you didn't do it, it's such a fantastic vehicle to have a super highway into the future. So you need to make it clear that you have not asked any of us to come out of our pocket to give you any money. Whatever money you needed, you've been able to whatever. But they need to make a contribution. They need to make, or buying stuff is one thing. But if somebody can throw away $1,000 on a pair of sneakers, they need to give you some $500. If someone can spend $10,000 on some damn car, then they can give you $5,000 as a donation. So you need to set yourself up to receive these gifts that
I say this, Doc. We want to make sure that they watch the film and they see what it's about. I think some people are kind of sitting on the sidelines. But with that, we're going to actually close out. But Dr. J, we got to bring you back another day. We can have a more extensive conversation. So, Dr. Rashidi, Dr. J, you want to say something else, Doc, before we close? Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, if you do not bring us back, you're going to be in trouble, because we have pathways up to the ancestors and significant others up there. You don't want to have that wrath coming down on your behind.
No, we don't.
Do the right thing.
No, we don't. And this whole HAPI Talks platform was built on the inspiration, the spiritual power, as you mentioned, of the ancestors, and stand on the shoulders of the elders. And I thank you and Dr. Runoko Rashidi tonight tremendously. You all been a big part of this. The HAPI Talks is an extension of the HAPI film. It's all a part of the overall HAPI movement, teaching the youth. Black.
You can't talk about Dr. Runoko Rashidi and Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Dr. Van Serter and all this without mentioning the women that were important in our lives, our mothers, our aunties, our partners. Rosalind going to say, well, look, if I hadn't been standing next to this Negro, do you think he could have transformed himself into an African? He might still be doing some stupid things, but the male and the female complementarity, the ancestral relationship, all of that is what gives us this enormous power to our people forever and ever.
And Dr. Rosalind Jeffries is a huge part of HAPI. She's in the film, and we thank her for her contribution, and she's been on the platform, and she's definitely been a huge supporter of everything that we've done. Also with that, before we go, we want to announce the winners of the contest tonight, those who will receiving the webinar. So we have the Runoko winners, Jatoon Bailey, Donnell Peoples, and Janae Campbell. Everyone give them a big shout out, say thank you to them, for the people who've actually participated. And Sister Felicia will be in touch with you and give you your prizes. With
And
that,
Brother Taki, there was a sister who was a close partner of Rosin. She was a great teacher. She was into African art and culture, and we just had a ceremony sending her off to the ancestors. That's Sister Claudia Hurst, and she was also a part of the Jeffries Foundation. She was our treasurer, but she really lived a full life, and she made her contribution. And so that we wanted to have her name mentioned along with Dr. Pat Newton Segmet, who again was one of these scholar warrior women that are necessary to make the balance in life that we need. So I'm going to let you go.
Yes, if you two great elders can hang out backstage, I just want to close out the show and say thank you for everyone coming out to join us tonight. Powerful show. We have the surprise special guests come in to give us a whole nother context of our story that we kind of, and he tied it all in very well, talking about these statues and these images around the world and how they built on the foundation of the Blackness and the Black Madonna. And just ironically, we had the conversation about the Black Madonna earlier. So with that, we want to say thank you to everyone coming out tonight. Shout out to
we want to thank Brother Charles because he comes whenever we need him to make the magic of this technology work. So
yes, and for those people who are interested in talking to Dr. Jeffries and maybe having him on your platform, yes, the Brother Charles is essential to this process, because without this, it would not be happening without the Brother Charles. Definitely shout out to Charles. Shout out to Shirley Dixon. Thank you very much for your love. Jay Bay, thank you, brother. Peace. Definitely, like Dr. J said, those who have not seen the film, I promise you, you will not be disappointed. You've never seen anything like it before. The film was shot throughout the world on location. Powerful film. If the next screening is November 21st, Saturday at 7 p.m. Get your tickets at www.hapifilm.com. Yes, sir. If you cannot wait, the DVD is available. You go right to hapifilm.com and get your DVD. If you don't want to wait for the DVD to come in the mail, you can go to hapifilm.com, HAPIFILM, and get the digital copy, which you can start watching right now. Fantastic piece of work. You're going to love it. Our next show, October 22nd, HAPI Talks will be reparations. Nakichi Taifa and Dr. Julian Malvo. Powerful discussion of reparations next week, next Thursday, 7 p.m. Make sure you get your tickets. Come in the building. Tickets are free. HAPI Talks. Come in. You definitely want to be a part of that discussion. Shout out to Donnell Peoples. Much love. Haru Ra, Netcha. Everyone that's in the building. Definitely a powerful discussion. Also, HAPI merchandise. You can get the HAPI t-shirts at the HAPI store. HAPI merchandise, www.hapifilm.com. Please support the platform. Please make this go viral. Also, again, like, subscribe, share all platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And with that said, lastly, Sister Felicia just put it up. We're at a little bit over 9,000.
Hold on 1 second.
Hey, Taki, I just wanted to make sure that everybody
Okay, Doc.
that African Heritage Studies Association.
We can't hear you, Charles.
Just wanted to make everybody aware that starting tonight and continuing all day tomorrow and Saturday, the African Heritage Studies Association is having their 51st annual conference.
Hey, Charles, you may have to change spots with Dr. J. We can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Stay I think the mic might be okay. Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Yeah, the mic must be over on this side of the. But it's all day Saturday, and concurrently,
You're not. We can't hear you. Nah, it's like you're in and out.
I don't know why that's so. All right. Can you hear me now? All right. So this tonight, starting tonight and continuing tomorrow and Saturday is the African Heritage Studies Association conference. The conference is free this year and it's virtual.
because of COVID. So tonight,
Hey, Charles, you're kind of like, I tell you what, brother, let's do this. Why don't you send Felicia the message? We'll put it in the chat. If you can do that, we'll post it because you're like in and out and we'll keep fading. So we'll post the information. Just make sure you send her a quick email if you can. And Felicia, you know, she'll get it up there and she'll make sure it's shared in all the platforms. Okay?
Okay. All right. The struggle continues, and we're on a victorious path.
All right, everyone. So thank you for joining us. Again, another exciting episode of HAPI Talks. Next week, next Thursday, again, Nkechi Taifa, Dr. Julian Malvo, powerful discussion, reparations. Let's get ready for that one. HAPIFilm, www.hapifilm.com. Please go out, see the film. You're going to love it. You're not going to be disappointed. Support the elders, support Dr. Runoko Rashidi's, his book, his webinar, great information. Make sure you be a part of it. Dr. J, we love you. We salute you. Everyone take care. Also, yeah, the 3 films, Tekken, Nubia, and HAPI, definitely got to go get those. Got the bundle package available on the website for those. Nubia was the first work we did, Dr. J and I guess about 15 years ago, around 2006, 2007. We did Nubia, the Untold Story. Tekken, uncovering the influence of ancient Egypt. And now HAPI. You can get the 3 DVD set at www.hapifilm.com for the bundle deal sale price. Again, with that being said, thank you very much.